Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome everyone. Welcome. I'm very happy to have you joining us for the first session for GWLN during 2021 virtual WCUC. I hope everyone is doing well, staying healthy and safe in your respective parts of the world. We're all here today, early morning, afternoon, late evening for some of our friends all around the globe. We're coming together for GWLN 2021 virtual WCUC. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm really very happy to have you all with us. We want to begin our day by obviously officially thanking our sponsors and welcoming them to our GWLN session. We couldn't be here without the tremendous support from our huge sponsors. Co-op Financial Services, CUNA Mutual Group, and PSCU, among many other industry partners and individual supporters to GWLN that help us do the work that we do each and every day all around the globe. I'd like to mention to everyone, if you haven't had a chance to see through the WCUC platform, the opportunity that has come to us and the tremendous support that we receive from CUNA Mutual Group through the CUNA Mutual Group Challenge. They've been keeping us busy the last few months with the work that we've been doing. And the CUNA Mutual Group Challenge, it has challenged us and the credit union community to help advance our work and help grow credit unions worldwide. And CMG will match every dollar for you and your organization that is donated to the challenge up to $1 million. And we're really close. And we'd like to finish off WCUC by hitting that mark. So we encourage you all to go to the page on the Feedloop platform. On the bottom left is the donate button. It'll take you right to the CMG page, or you can reach out to us and we can get you connected so we can hit the mark with CMG. Now, GWLN, what's been happening? Well, today's a very big day for GWLN, and I'm very excited to share that we've had the tremendous opportunity to finally share with our community a project that we've been working on the last few months. Today, we released the GWLN Pink Paper, We for She, and it's a wonderful project that has come together through the work of a lot of our sister society leaders around the globe and our industry partners and the leaders that make GWLN what it is. We've compiled a survey together with one-on-one interviews, and we've put together some thoughts and ideas that tell us how and what it is to be a woman, a leader in the credit union industry, and just some tips and recommendations of what would help more women become leaders in the credit union space. And we hope you have a chance to check out the paper, and we'll be talking about some things in the paper and a lot of other things with our amazing panel that we have joining us today. Now, before I get into introducing our panel, amazing set of ladies from all around the globe, we want to spend a few moments and hear what one of our major industry partners does and what it's like to be in the ecosystem of co-op financial services. So before we move on to our ladies, I'd like to share a message from Co-op Financial Services.
This is Jason. Jason and his staff are about to have a really good day, breezing through what would have been a variety of challenges at his credit union, thanks to streamlined access to the tools, data, and reporting they need. Even before the first coffee break, teams across all departments have launched the My Co-op app, which hands down is the easiest way to manage the day ahead. Card Services Manager Ahmed is using My Co-op to access Co-op Springboard to pull together invaluable cardholder intel. Thanks to seamless cloud integration, he can effortlessly analyze a member's card engagement in real time, saving him the hassle of sorting through multiple disconnected resources. Meanwhile, over in marketing, lead analyst Brad is pulling custom reports from the Co-op Insight Center, pairing them with valuable card portfolio intel from Co-op's Smart Growth advisors. Now, they'll be more than ready to customize an enticing rewards plan to boost card usage thanks to Co-op's configurable loyalty solution, prompting members like Jane Toomey and hundreds of others to move their Netflix subscriptions to their rewards-earning credit union credit cards. and prompting a well-deserved celebration in marketing for boosting credit and debit transactions, putting them well on their way to becoming their members' primary financial relationship. Then there's lead developer Brittany, who used My Co-op to access the Co-op Developer Portal to successfully test the integration of a card activation and PIN change API into their credit union's mobile app. Now, her credit union, and even those without a dev team, can bring solutions and technology upgrades to market even quicker. Of course, Brittany and the entire staff realize the sophistication of their credit union's technology is only as effective as the security that surrounds it. Holistic, growth-driven security, overseen by Suki, whose fraud team counts on the machine learning power of Cooper Fraud Score. It's constantly predicting and preventing credit and debit fraud within nanoseconds, based on models her team has thoughtfully calibrated with the guidance of Co-op to match their credit union's risk tolerance. Of course, these aren't the only fraud tools protecting this savvy, growing credit union. They realize that a strategy that prevents fraud losses and reduces frustration and disruption in card use are equally valuable to their bottom line. Speaking of their bottom line, remember Jason? Well, he's happily sharing the credit union's card program benchmarks with a supervisor, who, in turn, is sharing them with the board, who was so impressed they plan to recognize the entire team for all their amazing efforts. Yep, for Jason and his teammates, who all realize just how invaluable the co-op ecosystem can be, it's been a very good day indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Co-op Financial Services, for being a tremendous supporter to all things GWLN. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn from you, to work with you, and to work with a lot of your colleagues all around the country. My name is Lena Giacomopoulos, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the first session of the GWLN sessions during 2021 virtual WCUC. And we're going to hang on just a few more minutes because we're having a couple people, latecomers, having some issues checking in. And so we're going to give them a few moments before we get into our session this morning. We're going to be talking about Accomplice, Ally, and Advocate, the 3 A's to narrow inequality gaps for women. And before we get to the session, just a few things. Obviously, we're all here virtually this year, and we all would prefer being in person during our in-person WCUC. And I know we all miss seeing each other and connecting, but I think we've also had a tremendous opportunity through the virtual platform to connect together and connect with more people from all around. Welcome to all of our sister society leaders, our GWLN members, our industry partners, the leadership teams. Welcome to our Athena Award winners, and welcome to our 2020 and 2021 scholars. And so we're all here together, and we may not have all been able to be together if we were in person. So the virtual platform is giving us a tremendous opportunity to connect all together. And it gives us the chance to say hello, to send the greetings. And today we have presence from all 6 of the continents where GWLN has at least one sister society. So I have to always throw that in there. You guys all know that I do that. So I'm very happy about that. And again, we need to thank our champions and our donors that help us do the work that we do. And in addition, like we said, to Co-op Financial Services, PSCU, and CUNA Mutual Group, we have to extend a very large thank you to the boards of the World Council and the Worldwide Foundation for Credit Unions. And a very large thank you to all the people that make all of this happen, who are behind the scenes, our WF team, our education and networking team, our IT, and all of the interpreters that also help us do what we do. So now I'd like to welcome our panelists, and we're going to begin with, I will introduce you to our moderator. Her name is Darcy Murray, and she's coming to us. She's coming to us actually from the US today. Welcome, Darcy. And for those of you who have never met Darcy before, she serves as the Senior Managing Partner at Allen Austin, and Darcy is the partner in charge of the executive search practice and the head of the business and professional services practice. She's a key member of Allen Austin's leadership team, But prior to that, Darcy began her career in retained search with Pedersen and Partners and spent more than 10 years in Europe. And she was an equity partner, COO, and head of North America. So welcome, Darcy, to our panel here today. We're thrilled to have you join us. And joining Darcy in the conversations and the questions that Darcy is going to pick on, one of the first people that we have joining us is Elenita Sanroque. Very happy to have Lenny, as many of you know her, join us. She's the CEO of the Association of Asian Confederation of Credit Unions, known as ACU. Many of you have seen Lenny join us many a times on numerous sessions and participating in all things GWLN. And she is one of our largest and most dynamic advocates for Asia. So welcome, Lenny, and thank you for joining us. ACU, for those of you who don't know, is the regional confederation of the National Credit Union Associations for 23 countries in Asia. Together, ACU represents over 32,000 credit unions with more than 46 million members. Lenny is a certified public accountant and has earned a certification on women's executive leadership at the University of California, Berkeley. She received her International Credit Union Development Education designation, and in 2016, she was our Athena Award winner from GWLN. So thank you, Lenny, again for joining us late in the evening in Bangkok. Along with Lenny, we also have Gisele Gomes. Gisele comes to us from Brazil. Gisele holds a Master's of Science in Diversity and Inclusion and is a sociologist by profession. She has a certification in gender balance from INSEAD and UN Women, and she's the CEO and founder of the consultancy firm focused on gender equality and leadership. She's a Sicredi credit union member, a GWLN ambassador for Brazil, and she sponsors a number of activities and initiatives for the sister societies around the country. Welcome, Gisele, a good friend from Brazil. And last but definitely not least, we have Teresa Freeborn joining us today. I'm very happy to have Teresa with us bright and early in her part of the United States. Teresa is the president of Connecta Federal Credit Union, and she is our Global Women's Leadership Network chair. And prior to the recent merger that Connecta had, Teresa served as the president and CEO at Exceed Financial Credit Union since 2006. She's an advocate for all things credit union in the United States and far abroad. And she recently served on the board of directors of the Credit Union National Association and serves as the chair for the CU Awareness LLC. And of course, you all know, Teresa has been with GWLN since the beginning. So welcome, Teresa, as well to the lovely panel. And right now I'm going to turn over the floor to Darcy. Darcy, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Lena, for that lovely introduction. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the globe who's joining us today. There's so many wonderful faces, so many men and women I'm happy to see that are participating in this. I am truly honored and excited to be here with you, and appreciate Lena asking me to take part in this really important discussion. As was already mentioned, a little background on me. I am the senior managing partner for a firm called Allen Austin. We're headquartered in Houston, where it's a balmy, probably 90 degrees at 10 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately. We are an executive search and leadership advisory consulting firm that focuses on helping companies achieve peak performing cultures. I've been in this industry for over 15 years. And over a decade of that, as Lena mentioned, was spent living in Europe and working at the global level. I was based in Prague for 10.5 years. I don't know if we have any representatives from the beautiful Czech Republic, my home away from home. But I was blessed at that time to have traveled to more than 50 countries as part of the growth and development of my previous firm. That opportunity actually afforded me the exposure to the realities of the continued gender disparities in business for women from a pay and leadership perspective. I became impassioned about these issues while living abroad. And locally in Prague, I joined a couple of associations focused on advancing women in executive and leadership roles and trying to impact closing the gaps that continue to persist today. I must admit, while I was overseas and as I continued to uncover the inequalities across industries for women, I think at that time I naively presumed that my home country, the United States, must certainly be further ahead and should be an example. Now, keep in mind, I was still relatively young in my business career when I left the United States. And certainly not in an advanced stage of my career. So somehow I was a little out of touch with the realities here. When I returned to the US several years ago, it became even more clear that there is still so much work to do here as well, and that being categorized as a quote unquote developed economy does not automatically assume that we have reached the pinnacles of equality across the spectrum in terms of pay and advancement opportunities. I've found over the years that there are a multitude of reasons that perpetuate these imbalances. They're not only societal, cultural, socioeconomic, gender or ethnicity related, but I've often found in many parts of the world that at times we women are our own worst enemies, either through lack of confidence, our own confidence, or even women keeping other women down due to the lack of seats at the table. Many times over the years, as I talked to women all over the world, it was not an uncommon story that a female boss or a peer was a barrier towards another woman's potential success and achievement. As we progress through our discussion today, I would love for each of you to think about what has been a barrier towards your professional achievements and developments. And at the end, hopefully, we will have some time to hear from some of you. Before we engage our esteemed panelists today, I want to share some statistics on some slides and insights related to gender disparities in the overall financial services industry, and then comparatively where they persist in the credit union space. So as you can see from the first slide, the global pay gap in various parts of the world. So the pay gap between men and women in the United States is about 18%. If we look in Brazil, for example, 26%, South Africa, 29%, Pakistan, 36% difference between men and women in terms of the pay gap, 21% in China. On average, globally, women are 23% less paid less than men around the world. And there are other factors aside from pay that contribute to those numbers, including workforce participation and access to credit. At the current rate, it will be 257 years to close the economic pay gap. Let that sink in for a second, 257 years. So next, if we look at the next statistics, so this was from the recent 2020 McKinsey Women in the Workplace report, and this is the inequity in leadership. Women, especially women of color, are underrepresented in the leadership of North American financial services firms. So if we look at the entry-level roles, white men holding 35%, men of color 18%, white women 29%, women of color only 18%. And as they progress throughout their careers from manager to the senior leadership positions, if we look at the C-suite, white men hold 66% of those positions, men of color only 12%, white women 19%, and women of color only 3% at the C-suite. Now, from 2015 to 2020, according to this report, there was an increase by 22%, but as you can see, we still have a very, very long way to go in the overall broader financial services industry in terms of equitable representation. So what holds women back? So this is from the wonderful report, the pink paper that was released that Lena mentioned today. So GWLN members claim that social norms are the primary cause of the discrepancy between male and female leaders. This was something when she sent me this report and I saw this, it really reiterated what I have found over my years. If you look at the far end of the graph, do not meet education requirements, insufficient years of experience, very low percentage of people surveyed selected that versus lack of confidence to advocate for themselves. Is a huge issue that precludes, and affects the discrepancy between male and female leaders. Family responsibilities, lack of adequate training, so areas that I think are quite eye-opening and which we have a lot of room for improvement. If we can go to the next. So one of the things that came from the McKinsey 2020 Women in the Workplace report is if we don't have enough things in the world to contribute to the gaps and the disparities, we have the wonderful global pandemic that has impacted us as well, that we have all been reeling from in various forms or fashions since the beginning of last year. And women, as reflected in the survey, tend to bear the burden of that care. Mothers are more likely than fathers to feel judged for caring during COVID-19. So 2.6 times more discomfort in sharing status as a parent, worry about being judged due to caregiving. Reading the report was quite insightful. They interviewed many women who just really struggled with having to work from home and becoming a teacher and making sure their children were getting educated, caring for the house, and dealing with everything all at once. So this was just another additive to some of the issues that have impacted women and their advancement and so forth in the past year and a half. So allies, one of the important topics. Oh, we just went somewhere. Did we lose the slides? Is that just me? Oh, there we are. So allies, a wonderful world of Zoom. You would think a year and a half in, we'd all know how to figure out how to operate it better. So allies, in name only, again, this is from one of the reports. So percent of employees who say they are allies to women of color versus percent who consistently take allyship actions. So 65% of women say that they are an ally to women of color at work versus 61% of men. But then as you see the survey of actions, so if you look at the first one, I actively listen to the personal stories of women of color about bias and mistreatment. That percent of women supporters goes down to 52%, 32% of men. If you look at the second one, I publicly acknowledge or give credit to women of color for their ideas and work. 45% of women acknowledge that, only 34% of men. And then to the very extreme at the end, I think one of, an example of something that, is incredibly disturbing in these statistics. I mentor or sponsor one or more women of color. 12% of women say they do that, 8% of men. And so that is part of what we're going to discuss today, in the panel discussion. So we can go to the next. So going forward, looking at the credit union statistics. So women CEOs at US credit unions. So the statistics show that over 51% of credit unions are run by women, while 97% of bank CEOs are men. That statistic is very impressive. However, if you look at the graph over to the right, you'll see that this is influenced by asset size of the credit union and banks. And so if you're looking at, asset size of 500 million and less, 55% of those are run by women. But as you go up to the larger asset sizes in the banks and the credit unions, you'll see, 1 billion and up, only 13% of those are run by women. And actually would love for Teresa to speak to that today during our panel discussion. We could go to the next slide. Again, conversely, 91% of US credit unions have women on their board, while 87% of that for commercial banks. And again, don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it is reflective also of the size of the institutions. So it tends to be a higher percent of women representation for asset size lower than 750, 1 billion, and much lower percent wise if you're looking at 1 billion and above in terms of asset size. So international women leadership in credit unions. Globally, women in credit unions still occupy fewer leadership positions than men. If we look, for example, at the graph in the Caribbean, 10% are on boards, 23% are CEOs. Latin America, 27% on boards, 23% CEOs. North America, 40% CEOs, 34% on boards. Europe has the best statistics in terms of 60% of the credit unions have female CEOs and 43% on boards. Asia with 26% CEOs and 36% on boards. So again, lots of room for improvement. So being an ally, again, this is one of the things that we will delve into with the panelists. What does that mean? What does that look like? How are women impacted by having successful role models? How do they perform better? What can we do in our companies to encourage women leadership with more progressive policies? One of the things that, I take a personal stance on in terms of my business as a company who is mandated by other companies to help in the recruitment efforts is to ensure that every single candidate list that we have has a diverse slate of candidates and that it's reflective and representative not only of the industry, but also, of the geography in which we're searching. So I think every single one of us has a responsibility to proactively act in that regard. And what can you do personally? And what can your company do to create policies around that? Male allies, as we'll talk about, are key to change. As it says here, Harvard Business Review defines male allies as members of an advantaged group committed to building relationships with women, expressing as little sexism in their own behavior as possible, understanding the social privilege conferred by their gender, and demonstrating active efforts to address gender inequities at work and in society. So with that, I will bring in our lovely panelists to join me, Teresa, Eleni, and Gisele. I'm very happy to be here with you ladies and to progress this discussion. Here we go. Okay, so we'll jump. Is everybody on? And Gisele, Eleni, yep, perfect. Good. So first question that I want to throw out, Gisele, in your respective region or part of the world, how well are women represented in credit unions? Is there a similar balance of women in leadership roles, or are they still underrepresented?
Thank you, Darcy. It's such an honor to be here in this panel with Lena, with Teresa, with you, and with Lena. And I'm also very thrilled to represent Brazil, but also Latin America. I have to thank you for my colleagues in Colombia. They sent me some information, and it's wonderful to see so many friends around the globe. They were sending messages. So I think it's all about enjoying the journey as well. So I'm really enjoying this opportunity. Regarding your question, yes, we are still, how can I say, underrepresented. So I have here some data from Sicredi, from Brazil, and also from Colombia. In terms of population, here in Brazil, we have 52% of women and 48% of men. It's the same number for Colombia. And when we talk about leadership roles, my main focus here will be board of directors, because when we talk about leadership roles and leadership positions, we know that we have different levels, right? From the beginning to the top. So my main focus here will be the board of directors. So when I talk about the members, because our path to the leadership here in Brazil is focused on our members. We have a program to that. I will have 60% of men and 40% of women, also in Colombia, and general data of Brazil. And I have 83% of men in the board of directors positions and just 70% of women. It's quite the same number for the overall Brazil. In Colombia, this number will be 33% of women in the board of directors. The International Labor Organization and UN Women states that the gender parity starts when we have 30% of women represented in these levels. So we have just 17%. There is a lack of opportunities maybe. There's also a study by Thomson Reuters across more than 4,000 public companies found that while 64% had women on the board, only 20% had boards with over 20% of women. So it's just not about the numbers, but also about the small numbers. I really like a quote from Deborah Walton, and she says that there's one idea that really resonates for her, that it's called the power of three, more or less the 30% that the International Labor Markets and UN Women brings to us. So it's like that: one woman is a token, two are a presence, and three are a voice. So again, it's not just about the big number, the 17%, but how this number is sliced. Are we represented? Maybe within this 70%, I will have one woman in the board, but I don't have the power of three. So we have to look after the numbers, but we also have to look after the small numbers. They're very, very important.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gisele. Lenny, I'd like to pose the same question to you. In Asia, how well are women represented in credit unions? Is there a similar balance of women in leadership roles, or what is the representation like?
Yes, thank you very much, Darcy. And just Giselle said, I am also very honored and thrilled to be part of this panel. I have been seeing most of my friends greeting me, hi, and it's really great. Well, my answer to your question is still unrepresented. Women in the credit unions are still unrepresented. You have shown the data, it's 26. I am talking about 26 countries in Asia, and it's very diverse. I would say Giselle talked about 30%, which is a gender parity when it speaks about leadership in credit union. In India and in Nepal, the country has adopted a law that 30% of all sectors of institutions in those countries should have 30% women represented in the board. So I would say that in India and in Nepal, we have it's by law. 30% of the board should be comprised of women. In the Philippines, for example, I should say that we have the women representation in the board, higher level, higher than 26%. But all the rest of, and Mongolia, I should say, but all the rest of countries in Asia, in terms of credit unions, board of directors, they are still unrepresented. But what I could guarantee is that in every credit union, there is a woman representative, but in a lower level. ACU have been, addressing this issue on women leadership, balanced representation at the board since 1982. And what actually we achieved is that credit unions put in their bylaws that there should be a woman representative in the board. So at least it's already there. There is a level of education already, but we really have to push that women should be taking steps and taking forward to be able to participate in the leadership. When women are in the board, I think I agree with Giselle. We have to find our voice and we have to share our voice, because more than 50% of membership of credit unions are women. And so we have to bring to the attention of the board what women needs in order for them to be empowered and developed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lenny. So Teresa, to you, so question for you, what is, speak maybe to the gender pay gap in credit unions in the United States, and maybe as an addition to that, how can we advocate better for ourselves in terms of decreasing that gap that we find ourselves in the US?
Thank you, Darcy, and great to be part of this panel. So great to work with Lenny and Gisele and you, Darcy. So I'm looking forward to some fun this morning. But so this is a really big question and very complicated, and it's interesting. I don't know if I can talk about the money side until I just give a couple of remarks on what both Lenny and Gisele say, but sort of from that U.S. perspective. And you know, you would think that when you talk about credit unions generally, that the U.S. Was incredibly progressive. You would think that, and I note that with your introduction, Darcy, you know, your home country and what's happened here. How come we're not there yet? We're still talking about this. You know, I think that the reality is the majority of credit union CEOs in the US are women. So sounds pretty fantastic. Yeah. But look at your stats. You know, the real story is so much more complicated than that. And that's because most, say the vast majority of the women CEOs in credit unions, they lead the smaller institutions. And you saw the stats there and how that was broken down. But, you know, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I don't think that those CEO positions at small institutions don't count. Of course they do. These are women that are working very, very hard and doing amazing work and are very important to our movement. So I don't want to discount that at all. But I guess I just want more for women. And I really want to see us to advocate on sort of cracking open those leadership ranks to women across the entire breadth of credit unions, all of the movement, not just small institutions, but everywhere. And that's where you see the huge disparity. So then, of course, Lenny, thank you for mentioning the boards, because I think that's also a critical piece, because if you think about it, you know, I remember being part of a whole movement about a decade ago, about 20 by 20, you know, 20% of boards of corporate America would have women, 20% of their boards would be comprised of women. And here we are, 2021. Sadly, we haven't hit that yet. We're still under 20%. And now we have a movement that says 50 by 50, or not 50 by 50, but 50-50, meaning 50% of corporate America boards should be represented with women at the table. And again, we're a far cry off of that. So much work to be done. But then if you go to your question, Darcy, and you really want to talk about so what does that translate to in terms of pay equity for gender pay gap? Well, again, this is why I say that this whole phenomenon of women running small credit unions, it actually kind of influences the overall numbers, and in a way that makes it complicated, it makes it hard for us to understand. But if you look at those women that run the very large credit unions, I believe there's gender pay parity there for sure. Okay. The problem is the number of women in the smaller institutions kind of skews the overall effect here. But I do want to say, women by and large are the ones that will go and work for those small institutions and make very small dollars comparatively. And that's the sad part. Men, maybe they're just a little smarter than us women, because they say, I'm not going to work for that small institution because the pay rate isn't good enough. So I want to work for a larger institution where I get the recognition, it's more prestigious, and I get the pay that goes with it. So it's a bit of an attitude. We're willing to jump in and help out at that small institution level, but we gotta figure out a way to move those women up and through and into larger institutions so they too can have that pay equity that we talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Teresa. I agree with that. And I think there's also the element of, you know, if we're looking at, quite honestly, you know, differences, you know, between men and women in that regard as well, is that my experience has been, and I don't want to completely generalize, is that men also, you know, are not afraid to ask. They're not afraid to ask for what they're worth, you know, for what they want. The worst thing that anyone can say is no. And I know myself as a woman executive and, you know, developing my career over the last 25 years, that was one of the hardest lessons I've ever learned. I thought, if I just work really hard and they see what I'm doing and they see what value I'm bringing, they're going to give it to me. They're going to give me the promotion. They're going to give me the money. Well, nobody is going to voluntarily give me anything. I need to ask for it. And I learned that from watching my male counterparts, you know, ask for what they wanted and what they thought they deserved. And so I think that's you know, something that all of us could kind of take a little bit of lesson is, you know, asking for what we want and what our value and worth is. So going on to one of the next questions, and I will open this up to any of you, but Gisele, we'll start with you. What are some of the biggest challenges or obstacles you have witnessed for women in terms of promotional and compensation growth and advancement, considering institutional and societal factors?
Well, for me, the first one is culture. So the organizations are made up of the same demography that is part of our society. So everything that affects our society as a whole also affects us as an organization. So when I say culture, I mean value systems, traditions, norms, beliefs, and you said us in the We for She report something about the norms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the second one would be the web of systemic challenges. So organizational structures, access to resources, lack of role models. We don't have that much number of role models, different role models. Systemic biases, psychological experiences, gender stereotypes, and language. Even when we're doing recruitment, do we consider language, or our language is a male language? So these kind of things, the second one. And the third one would be data, and this is small number. I think that we need to collect data, good data, and work through this data, right? The small numbers, and have these qualitative and quantitative perspective. That's what we need. So for me, it would be culture, web of systemic challenges, and data.
Great, thank you. Teresa, I'll pose the same question to you. What are some of the biggest obstacles or challenges you've witnessed for women in terms of growth and advancement?
Yeah, and usually what I respond to this question with is we don't have this awareness that there's a problem in our industry, so therefore we're not coming up with strategies to make it right. And what I'm really delighted to see is that we do, and we have been receiving a lot more data. Thank you, and Gisele, you're right on there. I mean, once you look at those numbers, it's pretty stark, and it really does make you realize that there's a real dearth of good, effective strategies to make a change here. So that's the first thing I would say. The other thing too is I think that, you know, if you look at those social norms, and I know there's so much to discuss within that context, but you know, there's lots of research in play that I mean, go back to even the book Lean In, and you heard Sheryl Sandberg talk about, you know, how pivotal a supportive spouse is to women actually advancing in their careers, because there's so many things that pull us back as we attempt to have it all, right? Have it all, as in have our families, have a career, get educated. I mean, there's just so much going on in our world, but if you don't have that supportive person at home that's there to say, yes, go get it. And I'm right here to catch you if you need it. And that's like one of the biggest things that I think we have to really think about. The good news is I think that younger women, as they're entering the workforce today and coming out of college with their education, because a lot more of them have it, and as they're doing that, they're selecting partners that get that. And it's going to start to change. But I know particularly in my age group, it's been a real resistor for years and years and years.
Absolutely. And you know, you referenced Lean In, and you know, I know so many of us have read that book, but there's also, just in case anybody's interested, they have a wonderful website, leanin.org, and it is so full of information and helpful advice and tips and resources. And it's particularly good about, you know, how do I be an ally? You know, it's for men, for women, it's for everyone. So if anybody's interested in what you can do, it gives great recommendations for companies, how to create progressive policies for companies. So it's just a great resource, actually, if anyone's interested in that. So in terms of negotiations, let's talk about that. So Lenny, let's start with you. Is negotiating common in Asia, and you're part of the world, for men or women when vying for a new job or getting a promotion? You know, is that a cultural element? Can you speak to that possibly? Oh, you're on mute.
I am. Okay. No, it's not. It's not common here, Darcy. I think it's really a cultural thing. I have an experience. I am recruiting one person for our organization. She's very capable, and she talk a lot. We discuss a lot of things, and of course, the last thing that we will discuss is about the salary. And she told me, I never even think about the salary. I am only thinking whether I am capable of doing the job. I said, I will not recruit you if you're not capable of doing the job. I know that. But that is the last thing that you don't want to discuss with me. She said, no, I do not even want to talk about salary. Wow. But this person is very capable. She has a lot of experience. So I think it's part of the culture. It's part of the gender stereotype. And we are in a modern society, but the gender stereotype is very, very much, I think women are also thinking about that. I think it's innate with them. So they are thinking, I think we need to do a lot of work to erase the gender stereotype for us women.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Giselle, maybe you want to speak to that as well.
Well, Darcy, yes, the answer will be yes and no. First, I want to start saying that for me, women are not an universal category. So when I talk about women, and you showed us a picture of McKinsey and Company report about the leadership path. So when I talk about women, which women are we talking about? Because if I am a white woman, I receive a wage. If I am a woman of color, I receive another wage, another salary. So it's the same thing for negotiation. In my position, it's very common, for example, that I will negotiate my salary and everything. But for other women, maybe they don't have this opportunity. They just have to work, so they don't have the chance to negotiate that. So this is the first point. And I think this is a very important point, that we look to the women with this intersectional view. So we are not talking about the same issues sometimes. But yes, I would say that for women like me, it's kind of common. Here in Brazil, for example, talking about gender gap and negotiating, because we're talking about that, right? There was a law that was approved by our Senate against these gender pay gaps, these gender wages gaps, but it still has to be approved by our president. At the start of our presentation, you show that we have this gender pay gap, 26% here in Brazil. Unfortunately, in 2021, it's 30%, Darcy. So it's really, really sad. So yes, it is common for few women, maybe it's not common for other, but we have, again, this data, 30% is a lot, and we have to do that. How we do that as organizations and as a society as a whole, right?
Right, absolutely. That was one thing that I have noticed in reading some of the reports. That has also been an impact of COVID the last year and a half. It is truly impacted a lot of these statistics that were improving to some degree over the last 5, 10, 15 years. But more women have stepped out of the workforce in the last year and a half. And so there have been those influences as well. Teresa, maybe you can speak to this, negotiating, your experience maybe as a female executive, in the wonderful world of negotiating for yourself, and share some wisdom and insights into that.
Well, and I think that you sort of introduced it as such, but if you think about it, women have tended to be very sort of averse to negotiating, period, okay? And that's probably, a lot of that has to do with cultural expectations for sure, but it also wasn't viewed as feminine to appear so demanding, right? I mean, I think we had our own fears of negotiating, appearing to be demanding. in any way, of course, is going to lessen our chances of actually getting the job. Lenny, I mean, that's the point. You don't want to talk about money. You don't want to talk about what your value is and what you're worth, because you just want the job. And that's kind of where I came from and how I made my way through life in the past decades. But I didn't want to come across as difficult or somehow just being greedy, for goodness sake. I don't think men ever used that word when they were in their, trying to get the job. They didn't talk like that, but we did. And that was internal speak. And that just kept affirming how we were feeling. But the good news is as more and more women are educated, what I am seeing here is there's less reticence. There's absolutely less reticence to negotiate on the part of themselves, especially these young women who I'm so thrilled that they've been raised to stand up for themselves, and to value the contributions that they bring as women, to embrace their feminine traits and attributes. And it's different today. So I do see a change coming. They're not afraid to let their talents and their gifts be known and what they can do that's different. And that's putting them and will put them in, I think, a very much stronger position to compete effectively for jobs in the future in those leadership roles. And I think that's what has to happen. We have to educate our women. And so programs like this, the Global Women's Leadership Network, what we're trying to do here is absolutely show that you can do this. You can make these kinds of shifts in how you approach the world to help you advance in leadership ranks within our movement. So, it's baby steps, but I feel it's coming, and it's assuring to me for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I was speaking to someone a few months ago who is a chief people officer for a credit union here in the US. And we were kind of talking about her career history and trajectory and what she's learned along the way. Having oftentimes, as many of us who are a little further advanced in our career, having to figure things out on our own and not having examples and role models. But we talked about kind of the art of negotiation. And she, told me that she's in the past engaged a compensation consultant, somebody to help, with negotiation. So there's so many different types of resources, out there that can help. When in doubt, if you're not certain how to tackle something. So I thought that was interesting. I've heard of every kind of coach or what have you, but I'd not heard of a compensation coach. So I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting, Darcy, because I think also this shows you that, as you have mentors or as you have executive sponsors, they will help you with this too. It's that coaching piece. You don't even have to be an official coach. That's fantastic that there's a comp coach like that. But just having someone say to you, it's okay for you to talk about the money. It's okay for you to talk about your expectations. You're worth it. Yeah. And it's that kind of coaching that we have to do a lot more of, for sure.
Absolutely. So Teresa, another question for you. So oftentimes, we can find with compensation and advancement gaps are somewhat slowed due to a variety of reasons by women themselves, aversion to risk, prioritizing family. Do you find similar issues impacting advancement for women, or what are some of the factors that influence these advancements from kind of a personal perspective?
I can't wait to look back maybe in a couple of decades and see how we all made out here. But I feel that we're on the right road here. But it's pervasive in the U.S. There's no question, and it's largely due to some very outdated expectations that only women can be the nurturing one for their children, for the couple's children. And, I think we have to just accept the fact that women are still primarily responsible for more of a typical family's domestic tasks, for instance. And it can be housework and grocery shopping and childcare tasks. It's doing homework with the kids. It's doing the financing. It's making the medical appointments. It's looking after the pets. It's like women do the lion's share of this. It's not changing. We're doing that, but we're also trying to have these careers and sit at the table and also be in this very cerebral corporate kind of place, but at the same time, all this stuff is going on. So the reality is we have to balance all of that. There are also some pretty hard facts still in the US. I don't see an alternative to being risk averse. Women putting their careers on the back burner. They're doing that for the simple reason that they're single mothers, actually, and quite frankly, there's a lot of absentee fathers, and they have to, okay? They have to do this. They can't just say what? Someone else is going to look after the kids. So they've got this dual sort of competition going on to try and be all they can be in their careers. But at the same time, they're not going to leave their children alone and not cared for. So that's a very important part. But, you know, I think the other part that I wanted to mention here is that finally, I think we're at a place in the US where, you know, women in the US are no longer viewed as freaks, for instance, if they choose not to have children. Whereas there was a time where, what do you mean you're not having children? Every mother and every mother-in-law expected their kids to have kids. And that's what was always the pressure there. But so the overwhelming majority, they still do make that choice. And here's the problem I have is there's no support and resources there for a lot of the women that might have the talent and that might have the ambition to go for really key leadership roles, but we don't support them in society, not yet, in a way that should be done. And I'm talking here about, you know, what's your benefit structure at a financial institution today that would actually help women have it all? Because that's really what we need to see. We need to see more women in those ranks. But what are we doing? What are those strategies to make sure we remove some of those barriers that would seem kind of simple at first? I don't know about you, but as a working woman, what I really need is, how about 5 hours a week of a personal assistant to do that to-do list every day? You know, little things like that. There are a lot of other benefits I could care less about, but when it comes to my time is the most important because of all these other pressures. So yeah, it's a really good question. I'm glad you raised it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Teresa. Lenny, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What do you see, you know, in your part of the world in Asia, are some of the, you know, reasons that maybe women themselves, you know, are precluding their own development and advancement in the industry? Oh, you're on mute.
Asian country is very diverse. And I think in developing countries, the reason why we do not see a lot of women in the leadership position is because women here are suffering on poverty. You know, before they're able to think about volunteering into a board position, I think what they are thinking is, you know, whether they would be able to feed their family. So poverty is one of the big issue, and I think the credit union should look after to that. You know, maybe later on I can share one example on how we do this, but I think poverty is a great challenge for women to be able to participate in volunteer positions. And one big challenge as well is the self-confidence gap. And you know, I have seen that, and I have experienced that myself. I am the first CEO, woman CEO of the Asian Confederation of Credit Unions after 43 years. And you know, 5 years before I will be appointed as a CEO, my previous CEO already put me in the succession plan. And when he did that, you know, I said, oh no, can I really do this? But at that time, when I was talking that time, whether I can do this, and I doubting myself, I was already working in this organization for about, let me see, I think about 19 years. So at that time, you know, I still doubt myself whether I can really take up the position. I think the self-confidence gap and the self-doubt should be removed. We need to help the women to overcome that. So, you know, I think those are the two challenges that I can share that we need to address in credit union. We are talking about strategies that we can, you know, implement in our credit unions to ensure that women are climbing up into managerial positions or a leadership position. I think those two are very important.
Yeah, thank you, Lenny, for that. I think that's so true. And I think, you know, not to use a cliche phrase, but it just reminds me of you know, one of the prevalent topics, this imposter syndrome. And I think so many women have faced that in their careers and their lives. And I know I still do. at, almost 50, I get a new opportunity or a new role, and I think to myself, they're going to figure out that I don't know anything, like, are they, I'm not, I fake it till you make it. I don't know what's happening. And so I think there's still that pervasive thought at the back of our minds from whatever that is born from, that we have to work through, whether that's through partnering with other women, through mentoring, through coaching, whatever that looks like. That is so pervasive and just feeds into that lack of confidence. So I appreciate you sharing that. So one of the next questions, and I will open this up to all of you ladies. Gisele, we'll start with you. What do you see are the biggest challenges for the advancement of women in this industry?
Well, again, I think it's culture and collecting data. But recently, I delivered my thesis about a program that we have here at Cicredi. It's called Sister Societies or Women's Committee. And one of the questions that I posed, what are the challenges for us to advance women in our industry? And the majority of the answer, the people who answered my research, they were men. And they said that would be very important. It is very important to create an environment where we can give opportunity for women. So change this kind of social and historic environment that we have in order to provide kind of space for them to have equality, equity, and parity. And the other thing, when we talk about Brazil and is our history, in the past, when the credit unions, they were born in the countryside, in the agribusiness, and that time, the majority of the members were men. So we kind of have this historic path that we are trying to change. So I think that we have to change the environment, and to do that, we need to change our culture, and to do that, we have to study, and we have to collect data, and we have to be open to that. We really want to do something. We have to be willing to change the reality. There is a statement of Ban Ki-moon from 2015, and he said that the world will never realize 100% of its goals if 50% of its people cannot realize their full potential. So when we unleash the power of women, we can secure the future for all. So it's all about that. It's about equality. It's good for men and women. So I think we have a very important role as credit unions talking about social justice.
Absolutely, thank you. Lenny, same question. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see for the advancement of women in the credit union industry?
Okay. I think I mentioned already that stereotype is still very common, where it is the stereotypes are killing the women's self-confidence. Women are less assertive. When women are assertive, they are unfeminine. I think there's a lot of education that we need to do with both men and women, because if we do the education, we can take that into policies for enabling regulatory or enabling environment for credit unions to participate, and including for women to participate, and including the programming of credit unions to open the door for more opportunities for women, including in the products and services, and including other types of services that supports the women in their domestic task.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lenny. And Teresa, I'll pose the same question to you. What are some of the biggest challenges you see for women in this industry?
Yeah, and I think if I can put it into two words, and I'll speak to both of them. One would be denial is a big challenge, and the other would be fatigue. And denial from the perspective that, I've been in this industry for a long, long time, but I know that there are still a whole group of of people out there that think that because they have a woman on their leadership team, or maybe 2 out of 7, or 10% of their board is female, that they've done it. They've checked that box. And I'm here to say no. Think of a world where 50% of the decision making is done by women at the table with men. And think of the different world we would be in today if we could just get to that place. And that has to be our sort of underlying, vision of where we want to go here. So I think that we've got to get over the denial. Denial means that, guys, just listen here, take a real good look, count what you've got as percentage in your area, whether it's leadership team, whether it's that next level of leadership, whether it's the board table. Stop the denial and take a hard look at those numbers, and you're going to find that they're quite eye-opening, and we need to do something about it. So there's the first thing. The second is the fatigue situation, and this is where I'm taking this kind of personally now, because it's like when you've been repeatedly shut down or denied opportunities, discouraged from even trying for some positions year after year after year, you get a little tired. It's exhausting, and when you keep talking about we need to move this needle and it's not moving. And when you talk about 257 years, did you say that, Darcy, earlier? Yes. 257 years before we actually have that parity. It's like, that's just not unacceptable. So, which means it shows me why so many women give up. It shows me why we just don't do anything. We don't progress. So that fatigue is getting in the way. And again, look for these opportunities. I love that the sister societies get together and talk about these things. What we got to now do, though, is start talking about what strategies are we going to put in play to make the change and start to see a rapid advancement here. And if it means it doesn't mean that, yes, you could say, well, men maybe need to get out of the way so women can have some of those posts, but how about we just expand the field? So if you've got a board of 10, make it a board of 15 and get more women on, like if that's what you have to do. There are so many strategies, and I know we're not talking about strategies today, but man, I think it's time to start embracing some of that and moving that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I was recently talking to the chief people officer, another one of a multi-billion-dollar credit union here in Texas. And, we were talking about some particular roles, and, I was asking about their demographics in the company, and more than 60% of the people who work for this credit union are women. But at the executive leadership position, there's one of only 7 or 8 in the leadership team. The disparity is so huge. And so really having conversations about, what can they do? And again, for us, being kind of a service partner to companies like that, how can we make sure that, when we're partnering with you, that we're making sure that we're putting, that diversity forward as well, but recognizing that we have an issue here. And so what can we do? And I think, Teresa, hopefully maybe we can get into some solution talking at the end of this. So next question I have, Lenny, so with your association in Asia, what steps are you taking to ensure women continue to advance within the industry?
Okay. In the structure of the Asian Confederation of Credit Unions, we have Women and Youth Advisory Committee. It was formed by the board since 1982, and it means that since that time we have recognized the need to address significant involvement of women and also youth. And this committee is meeting annually, and it's like an advisory to the board. So we are getting input from them on the programming that we need for credit unions. ACU is a regional confederation, so that really helps a lot for us. We also have a program to support women in order for them to have a self-employment. I think it was in 2015 where I got a grant from the Global Women's Leadership Network, and we piloted the business development services. It means that we are targeting unemployed women so that these women will have an opportunity to improve their financial well-being. At that time, when they improve their financial well-being, that is the time that they will open up their opportunity to be in the leadership position. Since that time in 2015, it was only a pilot project, but now it's become a program for the Asian credit unions. The sister society, of course, I won't, I'd like to thank the Global Women's Leadership Network because we organize at least, I think, 36 sister society chapters, because I think it is important to have a platform for women to discuss their own issues. It's not only their own issue, but it's also to improve their leadership skills. They get courage, they get inspiration and motivation because of the global women GWLN, which is the sister society. We have the sister society local chapters here. So that's our current programming.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lenny. So this is a question for all of you. And Teresa, I'll start with you. How can we engage more men to be allies and advocates for the advancement of women?
Well, I think that there's sort of a combination of carrots and sticks here. Okay, so my first and favorite approach, of course, would be to engage more men, is using sort of a positive approach here by helping them to see that their efforts to advance women in the context of supporting the women that they love and the women and girls that they love, for instance, that is, what about their wives and sisters and daughters who have benefited from them doing the right thing? It's pretty amazing and gratifying that over the years, I've seen a lot of old school men turn into feminists, because of course what they did is they came to understand all of the injustices and the discrimination that their own loved ones experienced in the workplace. And so I think it's about appealing to the emotional place there, because I think that men do want everything the same as they want for their sons, they want for their daughters. I honestly believe that. And I think it's just that when you put a big bright light on it, I think that's when people pay attention. So that's my favorite approach. But I also, there are a group of men out there, they dig in their heels and they deny that we have a problem. And, so when the positive approaches don't work, and I know this may not be popular in every discussion forum here, but, I'm becoming increasingly supportive of some public accountability here. I'm not talking about shaming individuals that don't support women and the advancement of women, because I guess I just see that cancel culture as being just another way of further dividing us at a time where I think what's really important here is that we come together and solve this problem. But I do see a role for public accountability here, about setting goals and living by them and making sure that you're accomplishing them at your individual credit unions. I think we can still do that. And to me, that's public. And let's put that out there. Let's tell our staff that we're not going to settle for less than 50-50. We're going forward with that. That's what we're working on. We're going to work hard on that. Men have to be in this conversation. I want to work with them to accomplish what we need to accomplish here. Let's not forget, corporate America was built by men for men hundreds of years ago, right? Now we're trying to find our way in there, and it's difficult. And a lot of men honestly don't understand how we feel or where we come from in this program. So that's why I'm saying conversation with men in that conversation is what's important here. We just want to share some of that power, and it's a good thing for our corporations and our credit unions to share that power and bring that kind of perspective to the table. So it's a big order, I know, but that's kind of where I come from in that regard.
Well, thank you. Lenny, what about you?
Yes, I think I share also with Teresa that we need to involve them in the conversation. We need to engage them, because we are not waging war against men with what we are doing. We want them to listen to women's voice.
Right.
And I think everyone must also find the why we are doing this, why we are, because it's only simple. Because we have more than 50% members of credit unions who are women, and so women's voice should be at the board table. So we need to let them understand why we are doing this, and I think it is also very important that to let them understand this is not a popularity contest. It is about leadership in the credit union, because we need to know the purpose why we are there. or in the first place. And why we are there in the first place is to improve the financial well-being of the members. And most of the members who are poor are women. So we need women's voice. And when the women are on the board table, I think the women should be able to articulate the issues that represents women's voice.
Thank you. Gisela, your input on this topic.
Well, I totally agree with Teresa and Lenny. So I think we have to bring this topic to the table and to make everybody understand that gender balance is great for women and men. There is a writer, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and she talks about the danger of a single story. This is not a single story. This is a story for all of us and about all of us. So that's why we have to share this. So it's a good perspective when we talk about social justice. All of us, we need and we want a better world, and we are just going to have that. And if we have this equality, there are also lots of researches that shows that this world is not good for men as well. There is a research, and the report, the name is the Man Box Report, and how men are expected to behave. And it's not nice. This environment, inequality, is bad for men and women. So we need lots of he for she, we need lots of she for she, and we need lots of we for she. So that's all about this balance. So we really need to have allies, all allies. So it's not a single story, it's a multiple story, and all of us are part of this construction. We can change the world. Definitely we can change the world.
I love that, Gisela. He for she for she, we for she. I think we have the title of our next year's session, actually. So already planning ahead. So ladies, I have one more question that I added this morning, before we get started, that I would love to hear from you. So what advice, as we're closing out today's session, what advice can you give to the women participating here today from all over the world, in terms of actions they can take to advance their careers and strive towards closing these gaps? Lenny, let's start with you.
Yes, I think based on my experience, I think we need to be, we need to be standing out. How can we stand out? Because to prove that, yes, women really can lead, we need to stand out. We need to have our passion. We need to have our purpose in taking ourselves into the leadership of credit unions. So it's not just we need to understand what is our purpose, and I think that one will make you stand out as a leader of credit union.
Thank you. Gisela, what about you? Any advice for?
I love the idea of education. I think study brings lots of shine to our lives. I think it's very, very important. But also, I would say to women to engage in programs like the Global Women's Leadership Network, that we share knowledge, we share education, but also we share experiences, the human being experiences. And I really believe in the power of the network, of our network and the women network. So please engage in programs like we have here in Brazil. We have the Women's Committee. So that, I think that's the path. So this is wonderful. I love to be part of the GWLN.
Thank you. Teresa.
Great. This is like a big ad, Lena, for Global Women's Leadership Network, isn't it? Wow.
It is.
But I guess I would start by, as much as I know I've said it several times today, but can we just start counting? Like, can we just keep track of our progress? So set those goals and make the strategy come alive, and then see how we've done. And if we haven't done well enough, go back in and revisit your strategies. But you have to be dogged about this. It's no different than any other part of our business. So I just really want to stress that. and keeping the conversation going. And yes, using the forums we have for sure. You know, I'll leave you with one little tidbit because it's something that I'm dealing with right now in our organization at Connecta. You know, we go out to hire executive positions that just opened up recently. And the first thing that we come across is that, funny, why is it that we don't have any bright, capable women at the ready, to take an executive position? So it just made me realize just how much of an issue that sort of pipeline is. And maybe that also has to go hand in hand. Make sure your strategies include something that really speaks to that next level. If you want to bring women into the leadership ranks, don't wait till somebody leaves, because people are going to leave. It's constant churn, it's constant turnover. The way it is, all of us haven't worked at one job our entire lives. So things will move. But when they move, we should be ready. So all of this to say, as you leave here in our discussion today, man, if you could go back to your offices and pick 3 or 4 young, bright things and say, come and join us at one of these kinds of sessions.
Yes.
Bring them along, get them involved in this discussion, because it also helps to have that perspective. Come on, how fabulous would that be? Rather than us sitting around trying to figure out whatever all the strategies would be, think of what the young up and comings would have to say about that. What would they need? How can we help them? Give them that lift up and that leg up to get going here. So, you know, anyway, I see nothing but promise. So it's just been a great discussion. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Teresa. I agree. I think, you know, there are so many things that we can do. Companies, absolutely, building strategies, succession planning, statistics. You know, DE&I is more than just a fad. And so what are you doing? What are your companies doing, you know, in terms of accountability around those strategies? But also just as a woman, supporting other women, you know, bringing, as Teresa said, bringing other women along, bringing them to the table, not feeling threatened that there's not enough space for someone other than yourself, I think is also important. You know, supporting one another, helping one another to grow, you know, and to develop, does wonders for yourself as well, quite honestly. But looking around you and seeing how can I help facilitate the growth and development of those around me. So I have really appreciated being asked to take part in this. GWLN, this was an amazing experience for me personally. I was not familiar with this association before Lena reached out to me. I'm very honored, and thank you, Gisele, Lenny, and Teresa, for being part of this discussion. I think you guys have an incredible association, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of it. So I don't know if we want to open up. We have a few minutes. If you know we want to have some questions or some final thoughts or comments, I will leave it there.
Darcy, before I go into the final part and the thank yous to everyone, I do want to leave it open a little more for questions. There was a whole bunch going on in the chat. The ladies covered a tremendous amount of material. A very, very, very large thank you. A very, very large virtual GWLN hug from everyone around the globe, the 400 plus people that joined us on this call. But if someone has a question that they'd like to pose to one of the panelists that perhaps we didn't touch upon, and at this moment, whether it is in your native language or in the English language, please do so in the chat. We could spend at least another hour and a half going through a list of things that came up to me on this end. Thank you
Lena,
all.
it looks like there was a hand up. There's a hand up there, so maybe.
Jenna Lynn, would you like to pose a question?
Sure. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
It was good to see in the FOSHI report that 53% of women said that the GWLN helped advance their career. And now we see that for the first time in 50 years, female chairman CEO of WOCU.
Yes.
So I know one of the speakers spoke earlier on about having a certain percentage of women on boards. To me, it feels a bit of something like affirmative action. So my question is, something else is missing. What else can be done to have a better representation of women on boards, especially at the level of president of the board? Thank you.
Would
That's a
any
good
one of the
question.
ladies?
Teresa, would you like to tackle that one?
Oh, yeah, I think we need another panel though to go
Yeah.
get into this in some depth. But yes, so you know, I full disclosure, I was around when the first affirmative action was being proposed in the US. So this is not a new subject for me. And as much as I did mention that, you know, public accountability is an important thing, and that's kind of what affirmative action was getting into at the time, was just this full acknowledgement that women needed to be there. So guys, you got to make some room here. So do I think that there's a place for that today? I think that there's perhaps a gentler way to put that. I think that there are ways to include more women at the table. It may be at the expense of having the men there, but it's up to men to actually volunteer. That is really what I would hope that we could achieve, because of the emotional need. And we've already talked about that, you know, I know they want the same thing for their daughters as they do for their sons. So with that in mind, are you willing as a man, if you're on a board, are you willing to put your hand up and say, I'll step aside, but instead what I'm going to do is approach this very capable woman that I know could take the place, and think of the legacy for you in promoting and you know, lifting that woman up to that position. We need the men to help us here, because I just don't think you can go in and think that the world's going to change because we talk about it and talk about the importance. Men do have a big role here, and they do have the power. They are in those positions of power, and we're going to need their help to make room for women. And it can take many forms, including affirmative action, but not in a government sponsored program kind of way, but more as in a, can we just embrace that? Can we just embrace that we need some room there? And that's what I'd say to that.
Thank you, Teresa. Jenna Lynn, I think you've been covered. Lenny, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I think I will answer that based on my experience, because the leadership position that was offered to me is leading 23 countries in Asia. And I think we need to, you know, we need to give more opportunity for leadership training for our women, because we have already women in the board, only that they are not taking that top leadership position. Because when women are in the, when they are presented with this top leadership position, the self-doubt is always setting in. Even women who are very skillful with good educational background has always the tendency to doubt their skills and abilities to contribute. Actually, our self-doubt is only very simple. You know, what would people think about me? Do I look good? Those are the things that's, you know, very, very simple for women, but we have the abilities, and we need more push for the women to really take that top position.
Thank you, Lenny. Gisela has raised her hand, but I also have, I think, a question from Aura Marina.
Yes, I would just like to a quick compliment. No, it's not a compliment. I know what Janlyn is talking about, and we are discussing there is no just one simple answer about the board of directors and affirmative action. So there are lots of studies at this moment, Janlyn, and some say that compulsory is not necessary, and I think that more than affirmative actions, and we know that in some countries the affirmative actions work, as Lenny mentioned, in some others maybe not. So I think usually we are seeking for just one answer, but it's not just one answer. It depends on each country, it depends on each reality, and I think it's a huge effort, maybe through affirmative actions, but not just about that, other programs and engaging and education and lots of things. So I think there's not just one answer. So it's we have to build it together.
Aura, would you like to pose your question?
Yes. Buen día para todos. ¿Me escuchan?
Everybody, please, so we can hear Aura's question, click on the interpretation button and
¿Me
hit
escuchan?
Portuguese. Thank you.
Saludos para todos, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, te escuchamos ahora. Gracias.
Me gusta saludarlas y saludarlos a los varones que están participando en esta hermosa conferencia. Yo creo que lo más importante, nosotros ya tenemos el valor, como estaban hablando nuestras expositoras, y como nosotras como mujeres ya lo sabemos. La mujer dentro de la sociedad y dentro de la familia forma un papel protagónico, es multifuncional. Solo tenemos que nosotros accionar. Yo pienso que para que cada mujer, cada cooperativista active en sus juntas directivas, active en sus cooperativas, es de instarle, de animarle y de hacerle sentir segura, de nosotras las que ya estamos en este movimiento cooperativo, contagiar a las demás de esta energía, de esta pasión por el cooperativismo, de esta iniciativa por desarrollarse como persona, como mujer, como líder, porque lo que nos hace falta es liderazgo, es la acción, las cualidades, los valores, la capacidad la tenemos. Solo nos falta ese empujoncito para avanzar y para que nuestras cooperativas sean el 50% de participación, tanto en asociados como en juntas directivas y en todos los programas que se realicen. Ese es mi punto de vista y esa es mi sugerencia.
Thank you. Thank you, Aura. Thank you very much. We're coming up to having to close the session, which I'm very sad about because there's there's a lot more that can be said here. But I wanted again to take just a few moments to thank everyone. Darcy, Lenny, Gisele, of course, Teresa. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning, afternoon and evening. And for sharing a lot of information, a lot of insight, a lot of data, and a lot of very key points. And we've seen a lot of terms that have come across today and terms that we use across the board through GWLN. I'm going to constantly encourage everyone, just like everyone has already done, is to get involved with the network. That's your first step. If you don't know if there's a sister society in your area, reach out to us and we can get one started and connect you with the other sister societies in your area. GWLN is an excellent resource and is an excellent way for you to take those first steps to start advancing to more leadership roles in your organization. So whether it is through the PINK, through the sister societies and all things GWLN, we're going to constantly encourage you all to get involved. Thank you to all of our friends, members, sister societies, industry partners, scholars, and Athena Award winners that have joined us from all of the continents around the globe. We've had hundreds of people here this last hour and a half. It truly has been a wonderful and engaging conversation. We do want to remind everyone that you can still donate to the CUNA Mutual Group Challenge. And of course, a large thank you to all of my colleagues behind the scenes that have made today possible. We're glad that you could all finally join us, despite a few little technical glitches there. And we do want to encourage everyone to be able to join us for the remaining sessions today. We will see you shortly in a couple of hours for session 2. And we want to also encourage you all to be joining our Y-Cup sessions tomorrow. And of course, the last few sessions on Wednesday with our closing party for WCUC 21. So with that, I'm going to literally close our hour and a half off together. Thank you for joining us. Be well, everyone. Be healthy, be safe. And we will see you all very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you and bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Right.
Bye.
Obrigada.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Obrigado.
Thank you.
Bye. Goodbye.
Obrigada. Obrigada.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. And I know did it.
Bye.
Good morning.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Hello.
Ahora, hello. Jose, thank you. Ahora, thank you.
Obrigado.
Obrigado, Arthur. Obrigado.
Obrigado.
Gracias.
Gratidão.
Gracias. Saludos a todos.
Saludos a todos.